Well, why don't you start with Twisters you watched yesterday, you said?
I actually just went to the theater a few hours ago and I saw it
Okay.
with my friend in my neighborhood. We went to Times Square to see it. It was one of the, I think, only remaining theaters that's actually showing it because it's been out for a
It's been
couple
out for a
weeks
while,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, it says release date July 19th. So, yeah,
Oh
it's
wow.
been out for well over a month.
Yeah.
And I correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is it a remake or like there was something
No,
Twisters or like
I
in the
think
past?
yeah, I don't know if it's a direct sequel or not, but Twister came out with
Oh, Twister. Okay,
is
so
it I always get him backwards, but I think it's Bill Paxton that was in Twister in the original Twister and Helen Hunt.
okay, because this is Twisters plural.
Yeah.
That's the name of it. So, uh, your guy Glenn Powell's in it, and Daisy Edgerton Jones. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
Daisy Edgar Jones. She's the main character. She plays the character Kate, and she is a very intelligent woman, figure college age at the beginning of the film, who is trying to come up with a solution to the tornadoes that are prevalent in the state of Oklahoma and that are causing a lot of damage and heartbreak for the population out there. And herself and Anthony Ramos, who is in
Hmm.
Hamilton
Hmm.
and plays in the Heights, those two and three of their friends at the beginning of the film are coming up with this plan where and these are individuals who have studied meteorology and know in and out about tornadoes. So in her own basement, she comes up with this plan with how to put, and this is like beyond my area of expertise, but some sort of solution that they can put into the air that can ultimately wipe away and I don't want to say kill, but at least slow down the eye of the storm. So that's kind of what she's working towards. And that's like the beginning scene where herself, Anthony Ramos' character, Javi, and then three other characters that's in their group, one of them being her boyfriend, they start chasing a tornado, which at first they feel like is going very well. And then it ends up being like a category, I guess they call it like an F5 or E5. It's
Hmm.
it's a bit like the highest
Yeah.
category of tornado. And unfortunately, the experiment goes very wrong and she loses her boyfriend, the other girl in the group, and then the other guy in the group. So three out of the five of them unfortunately pass. And it's like pretty brutal too, how they all pass with just getting taken by the storm. In the midst of it, Javi, who's played by Anthony Ramos, he's kind of on the sidelines, like monitoring it from a separate vehicle. So he wasn't impacted. And then Daisy's character, unfortunately, was the only person. Well, she fortunately was able to survive Kate, but by like, a hair, she was able to, they were going under what is it, an overpass, and she was able to like find shelter and not get swept away by the storm. So that's how it starts. And then you skip to 5 years later where she's living and working in New York City in, let's just say, the weather department for a news station and just doing pretty much behind the desk work for meteorology. And she's told that she has someone waiting for her in the conference room. It ends up being her friend Hobby from 5 years later, and he says, "I need you. Come back to Oklahoma." And he explains how he was in the military and how he has come up with a plan and a group to help combat these storms because now more than ever, these major tornadoes are ruining Oklahoma. So after some deep convincing, she ends up flying back out and going with Javi and his team called I could think it's called the Storm Par, I believe. And that's like their group, and it's all men pretty much who have PhDs. in meteorology and studies storms specifically, hurricanes. So that's their organization. It's funded by this, which you come to find, this corrupt guy who I believe is just like giving them money to run their program, but the whole intent is this guy is like money and land motivated. So for him, he ends up making the guy that's backing this organization called Stormpar that Javi now works for. And he's sort of behind the scenes and he's, giving them the finances to fund this. But really, this guy is sort of winning anytime and making a profit off of people losing their homes because he's getting land. So you come to find that out, and then you meet this other group, and it seems like a very rebellious group of individuals that love just going out, and they call themselves tornado wranglers. And the head of it is Glenn Powell's character, who is named Tyler, and he's like a cowboy, formerly, I guess, used to ride bulls, and he came up with a new love for wrangling tornadoes. So he has his own setup where he chases tornadoes, and him and a couple of his friends, which are individuals who don't have meteorology degrees, and it's almost like they're going to head with Stormpar, which is the organization that Javi now works for. So Kate's kind of thrown back into this after, being put in a situation where she's traumatized after
Mm.
losing her ex and her three close friends. And she's at first pretty hesitant to joining this initiative. And the end goal, as Javi's saying, is we're gonna save a lot of people. And from what he is saying, he was in the military the past couple of years, and he was able to bring like portable, I can't explain it, but basically it's these, I guess, portable things that they look to be like space heaters, honestly. But he brings these portable things from the military, and he comes up with a plan with his fellow colleagues in Stormpar to use these as like a shield and make a triangle. And the plan is to use these portable things to help stop the tornadoes and to shrink them down. So at first, she's on board with this idea, Daisy, and he recruits Daisy knowing how smart she is and knowledgeable about tornadoes. So much so that at the beginning of, or when she comes back to Oklahoma, it's, we're going to call them the Tornado Wranglers, Glenn Powell's crew, and Stormpar are at like, I don't know, it looks like a lot of some sort or somewhere in the field and in the rural part of Oklahoma where these tornadoes are just developing, and they're just almost like in this lot waiting for a tornado to happen. And you see stormy skies both in the west and the east, and Glenn Powell's team, they start like going towards the east, and she's takes a dandelion. It's a pretty cool scene, and she sees where when she blows this dandelion, where the the pieces kind of blow and like follows that direction. It actually blows to the west, which at that point doesn't seem like a bigger storm. But she tells Anthony Ramos' character and her friend Javi and his crew at Stormpar go west. And then at that point, Glenn Powell, he's kind of just enticed by her methods, and he's like, follow this girl and follow Stormpar and see what happens. And they all start going west, and they've come to find that that's the bigger of the two storms that ends up developing into a much larger tornado. So this really gives her more credibility as someone who has that knowledge as an expert in tornadoes. So they're able to then go into the middle of the storm, and they're chasing storms and tornadoes throughout this film. And finally she goes back to like her initial project, that she started at the beginning of the film. And after coming face to face several times with Glenn Powell, who seems to be like the adversarial party at first, he ends up being somebody who is truly trustworthy and is there for the same reason and purpose as both Javi and Kate, to help save lives and save communities, because this has caused so much devastation for everyone in Oklahoma. And really, you come to find that Storm Par, as an organization, they're really putting up a front like they're there to help, but it's more of just them chasing these tornadoes and in efforts to this guy who's funding them to get more money at the end of the day, because he gets land anytime this happens with these atrocities. So Glenn Powell and Kate, sorry, Tyler and Kate end up becoming very close, and he helps her accomplish her goal of coming up with this solution to wrangle tornadoes and to diminish and have it wipe away with the proper balance of chemicals and the concoction that she comes up with. And not until the end of the film is she able to accomplish that. But it's really a good film that showcases collaboration, teamwork, and how you need different strengths to get something larger accomplished oftentimes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It sounds at least a little similar to the first one. The original one is
Okay.
it is Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, and he kind of has like a sixth sense almost about hurricanes, like or tornadoes. Sorry. I don't remember where it takes place, but every time they go out, like um, who is it? Carrie Elwes is running a team that's kind of opposite him. And what they have in the first one, they're not trying to stop storms necessarily, but they have these things that they launch into the hurricane that are like all these little sensors. And
Hmm.
Bill Paxton's character created it, and he never got it off the ground. And so he's trying to get it off the ground. Helen Hunt is his ex-wife because he's totally like uh, tornado, nut. And he Carrie Elwes' character has basically stolen his idea. And so
Hmm.
they're kind of in a race against each other to launch this thing into the cloud to be the first one to study a tornado, like like the physical nature of the tornado.
Right.
And and so it's just a race of them, tracking down the perfect huge storm to get this thing up in there. Um, but Carrie Elwes' character is always a step behind because Bill Paxton, he can just tell, like he's looking, he can feel where it's going and all this stuff. And it's a pretty good movie, and there's a lot of people in it. I'm noticing that this one, Twisters, is like kind of a who's who of young actors right now. Like
Totally.
Daisy Edgar Jones, Glenn Powell, Anthony Ramos, Kiernan Shipka is in there. David Cornsweet, who's going to play Superman, is in there. Katie O'Brien's in there. She was just in, um, uh, I can't remember what it's called, something blood, something. But she's a bodybuilder or a wrestler or something. And she was just in something else too. But she's kind of up and coming. So yeah, there's a ton of young actors in this, and I think that's kind of cool. It was the summer blockbuster, right? Like that's what Glenn Powell said
Yeah,
he was excited about this movie for, is that he just wanted an exciting movie for people to be happy to go see.
definitely. And I wasn't sure what to think, because I mean it is definitely an action movie, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna love it, and I think maybe I was a bit biased by like what I saw in the previews, but I was entertained from start to finish. And I don't know anything about this world of meteorology, and specifically when it comes to tornadoes, given that I'm from the
Yeah.
Northeast and it's very uncommon to have tornadoes. So we're used to hurricanes, and you're probably used to earthquakes out,
Hmm.
growing up on the
Yeah.
West Coast. So this is, still very new, and you see the stuff on the news, but they get very detailed about just how these storms develop and how not only just it impacts the community, but also just what goes into chasing these things here. So, and from my understanding, like these are not things that are like very predictable, sort of like with a
No.
hurricane, we know a hurricane when a hurricane's going to come. Tornadoes, you're not prepared. And I mean, specifically the largest tornado at the end, it attacks this pretty small town, but they're in like an old school movie theater and it rips the screen out of the theater. And the screen, which is currently playing a movie, goes into the air. It's insane. So, pretty great special effects in that sense, and just how they showcase the eye of the storm and how they're chasing the storm and how it develops too. It was pretty cool for sure. And I believe Daisy Edgar Jones is a British actress. This is the second time I've seen her play. Let me just confirm that. Yep, she's from London. This is the second time I've seen her in a film. She was the main character, Kaya, and Where the Crawdads Sing. So
Hmm.
here she is playing another Southern girl with a Southern accent. And yeah, I mean, she was good in both roles. So I think she's definitely going places. I'm excited to see her and future productions
Yeah, I
and
saw
films to
something
come.
about her like a month ago, and she's one of like three actresses right now that like Hollywood producers basically aren't afraid to to use to head of projects like her, Sydney Sweeney, and like one other person like under 30 actresses under 30 that
Yeah,
they feel like if they're heading a project, it's going to be successful. And
interesting.
it's funny because I really only remember her from Twisters and Where the Crawdads Sing as far as big
Yeah.
things, but they're very confident in her as a like the next big thing. Um,
Was it Kaylee Spaney, the
it
third
might have been,
person?
yeah, it might
Because
have
I
been,
feel like she's popping up everywhere now
yeah,
too. I saw her in Priscilla. You saw her in that
Civil War,
movie,
yeah,
Civil War, and I feel like she's got a lot coming up. So I wouldn't be surprised if and they're all like fairly around the same age, those three women.
yeah, yeah. And I think they all, Sydney Sweeney, I think actually is probably the most like influential right now. I think the other two are a little quieter, but
Yeah.
they're very talented. The other two, I
Oh
think
yeah.
I think the talent spectrum, like Sydney Sweeney's pulling people in because of her like
Sex appeal.
overall, well, yeah, and just her overall clout. Like she's been in a bunch of things, and they've all been relatively successful, other than Madam Web. I don't think she's as good an actress as the other two,
Agreed.
but
100% not as good as an actress. But then again, who knows? But yeah, Kaylee Spaney, and I just saw her in Priscilla and she was great.
yeah.
And she's like, and you couldn't get like three different like looking women too when you think
Hmm.
about it, because like
Yeah.
Kaylee Spaney is like this tiny petite little thing, and I mean Sydney Sweeney is more of just like I'm sorry, but like she's this sexual icon. She's very
Yeah.
voluptuous
Yeah.
and just you know, and then you've got Daisy Edgar Jones, who's this like tall, very slim, sort of like classic beauty, but
Yeah.
different, and but all, very talented in different ways. So I'm curious to see if these are going to be like the new generation of women, sort of like I see like the women in their 30s that are really standing out or
Hmm.
have made their mark in Hollywood are Jennifer Lawrence, Emma Stone. I mean, some would maybe even argue, and I mean, it depends on who you're asking, but I thought Brie Larson's like could be in that category, not nearly in as much content as Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone, but I mean, she has an Oscar.
She's got an Oscar. She has done the Marvel movies. She was in Scott
Yeah,
Pilgrim, which was a big deal. Like she's,
yep,
she's got some clout too. Yeah, she got her Oscar for Room.
yep.
She was in something else that was really good too, and I can't remember what it is. But yeah, she's talented.
Oh, she's
Um,
nominated for Lessons in Chemistry, which is up
oh
for
yeah,
an Emmy. Yeah,
that's
so I
really
guess
good.
she's
That's
going.
really good.
Yeah, I know that I've heard that's
Um,
got a lot of Emmy buzz. So yeah, but we'll see. I mean, it's exciting to come across some of these women that are really making a name for themselves, young women that are making a name for themselves that, we see bright futures for, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, well, and it's funny that the two of those three have already worked with Glenn Powell, who is
Yep.
he feels like. like this generation's Tom Cruise almost. Like he's just doing everything.
Hmm.
Um, the stuff that he's doing is popular. It
Yeah.
makes me laugh because he's been around for a long time and nobody knew about him. He was a voice actor in a bunch of stuff,
Hmm.
um, and like animated series, like kids cartoons and stuff all over the place. And then in the last couple of years, he just blew up. And um, I think he's that guy that is willing to put in the work, and he's just going to be in like everything for the next few years.
Yeah.
But I
He's
think he's
not.
talented.
He is talented. He's not hard on the eyes either.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very good in this for sure. Very different role than from Anyone But You, 100%.
Hmm.
First time I saw him was in Hidden Figures. I don't know
Oh,
if you ever
okay.
saw that
Okay.
film,
No.
but that was the first time I saw him. He played John Glenn. Like he has a very
Okay.
small role,
Yeah.
but he plays John Glenn for a few minutes, under 5 minutes in the film. So that's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I didn't know who he was, and that came out like pre-COVID. I feel like COVID forward is like really where he's being
Hmm.
thrown into a lot more projects and different type of projects as well.
Yeah. He's really funny because I think he's not so good looking that it's overwhelming, right? Like he can actually be super dorky. Like he can
Like
look
Bradley Cooper type, like
sort
not like
of, even now, I think Bradley Cooper's probably, a little dreamier than Glenn Powell. Like he's got kind of an everyman look, but he's also good looking.
interesting.
But yeah, I look at him and I think, he's nerdy. Like, he can be nerdy, and I think he was like I remember I was watching The Dark Knight Rises, and me and my kids watched all three of the Christian Bale
Hmm.
Batman movies a few weeks back, and he has a like a background part, like a one line part in The Dark Knight Rises. But I was like, okay, so he was in that in
Mm,
2012, so that's 12 years ago. He was, doing acting. So he's been around for a long time, but this like last 2 year stretch has just been
really good for him.
his come up. I think it started with Top Gun, and then it was,
Hmm.
all wheels spinning from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. And yeah, we'll see what happens
Yeah.
with him. So, but yeah, overall good movie. Do recommend it. I can see why it was, why it's been still to today, up until today in theaters. It's and why it's successful. And I'm curious even just how much money it brought in too, if it's
Yeah, I
considered.
wonder, I can see that. Now I'll have to look up the budget somewhere else, but Twisters made not as much as I thought. 370 million worldwide, 265 million domestic. Um, the first weekend was really big though. It was an $81 million opening weekend. So
Yeah.
that's pretty huge. Um, but not as big as I expected. I thought it would be over the half a million mark. But
Hmm.
it's I think, like I said, Glenn Powell's goal is to bring back those summer blockbuster movies that people just want to go see and have fun watching. They don't have
Yeah.
to be the smartest movies ever made. They don't have to blow anybody away.
Agreed.
But they got to be fun. And I think that's, from everything that I've heard, that's what this was. It was only a 6.6 on IMDb. I'll have to look up Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm on it now. It's
Yeah.
75% from the critics,
Okay.
91% from um, the audience. And honestly, I think I'm somewhere in between there, maybe somewhere in the 80s if I had to rank it. It was good for sure. And I mean, I think I'm just going through the reviews now on both ends. Overall, very positive for sure.
Yeah, I think for a movie like that, for it to be 75% from the critics is pretty solid.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's good. So cool. All right. Well, sticking with action movies, then I will go to a movie that came out on Netflix last week called Rebel Ridge. And I had seen a bunch of buzz about it, like it came out, and I didn't know anything about it, like nothing. And so I just said, everybody's watching it. I'm going to give it a shot. And it stars this actor named Aaron Pierre, who he's just in something else now this weekend too. I think he's kind of on his own little rise. He was in the movie Old, the Shyamalan movie Old. He was a major character on the CW show Krypton, that or sci-fi maybe. Anyways, I don't think very many people watched it. It only got one season. Um, but I think he's going to be one to watch because he is actually really good in this. And uh, it's weird to say, but this dude might have the prettiest eyes I've ever seen in my life. Like he's very like striking. But the gist of the story is he is, he's a black man in the South somewhere. I don't remember if it really ever says. I'm sure it tells you what state it's in, but basically a relatively small town. His cousin was arrested, and so he's coming to bail him out so that they can deal with the consequences. And he's riding his bike in the town. So the opening scene is him riding his bike. He's got his headphones on, he's got a backpack on, and that's it. He is riding into town to, we don't even know what he's doing. He's just riding his bike. This cop comes up behind him, flashing his lights. For it doesn't seem like there you can hear the siren. He doesn't know the cop's behind him, and so after a minute or two, the cop bumps him off his bike with his car. Like his car hits the bike and sends him flying. And it is so the cop gets out of the car. It's one of the dudes from The Office. He was Pam's first boyfriend, and um, so he comes up and he's like, "Hey, I've been trying to flag you down or whatever. Why are you resisting arrest? Blah blah," blah. And starts coming at him with all these really aggressive like charges, like he's done something wrong, and it feels like it's potentially really race related, and that's kind of up in the air throughout the film. I don't know that race is the biggest factor in this film, but he starts going through all the stuff and he's like, well, let me go through your bag. And he's like, well, you can't go through my bag without me asking. He's like, cool. Well, we can get the canines to come down. Like it's just all really aggressive. And so finally he agrees to let them open his bag. When they open his bag, there's $30,000 in cash in there. So then all of a sudden they're like, oh, is this drug money? Are you looking to buy drugs, sell drugs, whatever, implying all this stuff that completely baseless. And he's like, so he just tells him, he's like, I'm going to bail my cousin out of jail. I got $10,000 for his bail, and then $20,000 left to, or the other way around. I think it's 20,000 for bail and 10,000 to go buy this truck so they can go start a business together. Like he just wants to get his cousin out of jail and move on with their lives. And the cop is like, nope, this is definitely drug money. We're going to confiscate it. And so he confiscates it, gives the dude a ticket, gives our main character Terry a ticket, and takes off. So now he has no money to bail out his cousin. He's stuck, injured, and whatever. So he rides into town. He finds the courthouse in town, tries to ask them about it, but it's like a Friday, so the weekend is starting, and the courthouse is about to shut down for the weekend. But he needs to bail out his cousin right then. He doesn't have any money, and there's this girl that kind of overhears him, played by Anna Sophia Robb, who I've heard of. Like her name feels really familiar. Even looking at her in this, like I didn't recognize her from whatever she's done in the past.
She's been in a lot of stuff, like
Yeah,
Bridge to
she's
Terabithia. She's in
okay. Okay.
the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
All right.
She played Soul Surfer. She played the girl who gets her arm taken off, like based on the true story.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
She's been around. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I recognize the name and I just couldn't put it together, which is fine. But so just the story is he tries really hard to work with the police department to get this money back and sets up his story, tells them everything, and they just kind of refuse. They're like, yeah, we don't believe you. And so this girl kind of pulls him to the side and she's like, look, uh, you're going to need a lawyer, but even if you get a lawyer, you're not going to get your money back. She's like, the way that it gets tied up in the courts, um, because they took the money and it was drug related, the money doesn't even get registered in his name when it gets stolen. It's just like the money is somehow the actual like criminal. So it's all this crazy stuff. And so he decides that he's going to do everything he can to get this money back. and everybody keeps coming at him super aggressively. Don Johnson plays the chief of police, and everybody basically tells him, he's out of luck, and they start to get kind of aggressive and violent. And so uh finally in one scene he comes to the courthouse and he calls them from outside and he's like, "Look, I just want my money. I don't want any problems, whatever." And so they're trying to figure out who he is. And so while he's outside, um the chief of police Don Johnson comes out, and he's got his gun on his hip and whatever, and they're trying to figure out what this dude's deal is, and it turns out he is a military martial arts specialist, like in unarmed combat. And Don Johnson basically pulls his gun on him after he's like, I want my money, I didn't do anything wrong, whatever. And there's this they have built up this story that is clearly about police corruption at this point. Like, our main character knows there's police corruption. The girl Anna Sophia Robb's character has talked to him about it and how he's just no way he's going to get his money. Um, and so his goal now is to kind of expose that, but also just to get his money. And so Don Johnson pulls the gun on him, and he goes full like badass ninja style and takes him down. And at this point, he takes him into the police station at gunpoint, sits him down with the girl that's working in there. And he's like, "Look," he's like, "I just want my money." He's like, "There's $30,000 in there." He's like, "Give me, $10,000 for bail and you can keep the rest." He's like, "I don't even care. I just want to get my cousin out of jail. That's my only goal here, whatever." Everything goes sideways, and now we have this action movie that takes place over the next bit. So he finds out that his cousin is going to jail because he's already too late. Um, his cousin gets murdered in jail, and so Don Johnson's character, after this dude comes in and kicks everybody's ass, is like, he's like, "Look, we made a mistake. We didn't understand who you were. We didn't know you've served your country, all this." He's like, "We will give you your money. We'll buy you your truck. You go on your way, and we'll never talk about this again." But now it's kind of become like this revenge story for this corrupt government because they basically sent his cousin to jail for nothing and he died, right? So it becomes what in most movies would be a total shoot 'em up, right? Like a Schwarzenegger movie, he'd be going in there with a shotgun and all this stuff. The entire film, other than rubber bullets, this dude does not shoot anyone. Doesn't kill anyone, doesn't do anything. So it's kind of this like super impressive like storytelling because he survives through this whole thing against this police department and all this stuff, and goes through and uncovers the corruption. And he's really a badass. Like, he takes everybody down. He's fully prepared, like he's super knowledgeable. He gets prepared for every situation he goes into, and takes these guys on. And ultimately we have a relatively happy ending at the end, all considered. Like, he still lost his cousin and all that. But even the ending is like super gritty. It's like a car chase that comes down to the wire and all this stuff. And it's just really good. And I think this guy he's really going somewhere because he's really intense, but he's not like overly intense. He's not a bad actor or an over actor at all. He really emotes well. And he's relatively he speaks really intelligently, but he doesn't speak a lot. It's like what was it in World War II? It was like, I speak softly but carry a big stick, I think is what it was that um the president, was it Truman? I don't remember. But you know, he's comes out and kicks ass, and that's all it is. It's just a really, really good action movie. It's long. It's like 2 hours long, and it definitely did not feel like it was moving at an aggressive pace. Like, it felt like the full 2 hours. But there's a lot of story. Like, the action really doesn't kick in till 45 minutes into it, and it's still really good. Like, it builds all this tension into what's going on, and then, it's him taking everything down, and it was a really fun watch. Like, it's really good. Like I said, it's intense. It's not like your typical action movie where you're rooting for all the bad guys to die. This guy is doing everything as right as he can in this very wrong situation, and he just does a really great job. And I think Don Johnson does a great job as playing this kind of um, corrupt backwoods official who, is just trying to, in his own way, he's just trying to make ends meet. They go through the story and kind of explain how um, their police department got looked over. And so what they do is they put these men in jail for 90 days and they get money for the arrests and they can keep things that are related to these men that are in jail. And as long as they let them out at 90 days, they don't have to deal with any extra paperwork. So these guys usually, like his cousin, spend 90 days in jail and get let out. And so they're taking in all this money for this work they're doing, funding their police department in a very corrupt way, keeping all this property and all this stuff while kind of keeping themselves out, under the radar because of the way they're operating. And it's a trip. Like I look at it and I'm like, I'm not sure how overly believable the story is, but then at the same time, like you watch something like John Wick and you're like, it's not really believable. This is more grounded. Like he's just a military officer. I don't remember his Marine Corps. I think it was, and he's a martial artist. But his profession is very believable. Whereas John Wick's an assassin and he's got a bajillion guns and he just kills everybody. Kills somebody with a ballpoint pen like it's crazy. And this guy is literally his goal is not to kill anybody. As a matter of fact, his goal is to not kill a single person, and he succeeds in that, which is really cool. And yeah, it's just a really good movie. I think it's a solid, and like I said, it's because of the kind of no kill rule that he has. It makes it a very different action movie than you usually see, and I think it's kind of refreshing, even though it's a darker film overall. It's still kind of refreshing to see. I'm
And it
excited
came
to.
out last week, you said?
Yeah, I want to say it was last Thursday. So what's today? Today is the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
So the 7th, the 6th, I guess, probably around September 6th.
I
It's
mean,
on
it's got a
Netflix.
95% on Rotten
Yeah, it
Tomatoes.
did really well on there. It's only a 7 on IMDb, and I think that's fine.
7. Mm-hmm.
Um, Let me see what uh, Aaron Pierre upcoming. He's going to be a character on the morning show. He's the voice of Mufasa in the Mufasa movie that's coming out.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then I don't know what this other one is. It just looks like it's just a short film, but I feel like Rebel Ridge was talked about a lot in kind of the entertainment kind of social sphere kind of world. And I think this is going to be a launching stone for him. I think he's going to show up in a lot of stuff in the next year or two. I think he's got a lot going for him. So it'll
Cool.
be fun to watch this guy kind of rise up.
Yeah. No, I
So
might need to check that out. That sounds really cool.
yeah, it is cool. And like I said, it's an action flick for sure. And he's got this relationship with the Anna Sophia Robb character, and they have a really good chemistry, but it's definitely not like a sexual chemistry. Like there's no drive
Mm-hmm.
towards a relationship. There's kind of an implication that maybe they could, like
Mm-hmm.
when this is all over, maybe give it a shot or whatever. But it is definitely
Sure.
not a driving um story arc through the movie. Like
Sure.
she wants to help him, achieve what he's trying to achieve, but it's not like they're trying to hook up.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, definitely worth a watch, especially if you like that action movie. But he's a cool character. He really is. So
Nice.
all right. So how about we stick with actiony blockbuster things? You talk about Avatar, the second one,
Yes.
right?
It is the second one, and I saw the first one maybe 2 years ago for the first time, and
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, there's a reason why. Well, I've been wanting to see it for years, and it's, I believe, the most successful movie of all time in the box office, from what I recall. And it took James Cameron, I think, at least 10 years to release the first one, and then for this most recent one that came out in the fall, I mean, there's at least what, 12, 13 years in between the first one and the second one, but I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. I mean, given that they're so freaking long, and I did enjoy the
They are
first
long.
one. I went to Disney World, and in Animal Kingdom, one of the lands is called Pandora, and there are two rides there. One is like the Navi River. It's like this slow, beautiful boat ride where you get to go and see all the gorgeous colors of Pandora, and you get to be in the forest with the Navi people, and it's like very it's like a really relaxing ride, and very immersive too, because you feel like you're a part of their community. And then they had the other ride, which is I think the best ride, Kevin, I've ever been on in my entire life. It's called Flight of Passage,
Yeah, I've been on
where
that one.
you're dude, it is the
It's
bat.
cool.
Like it is so cool. You are an avatar and you're on the bike, which is like supposed to be one of the creatures that you're
Hmm.
riding, and you have the goggles on and you're in their world
Yeah, and it's really like the whole
flying.
like the feel of flying. It's like if you've ever been on soaring over the world or soaring over California, like that has
It's
a
amazing.
feel to it, right? Like you feel like you're flying.
Hmm.
This is like a little more aggressive in that feel. Like you really feel like you're moving around and
The
navigating
wind
through
is
this.
is hitting you the way it should be hitting you as you're going
Yeah.
over treetops and into water, and it's stellar. Anyway, so because of this ride, this trip to Disney 2 years ago, I saw the first one. I've been wanting to see the second one. My parents saw the second one in the fall when it came out, and they told me they walked out of the theater, and I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds a bit dramatic. Let me see for myself. And I finally got around to it this past week. Came up on my Disney Plus account, and I was like, all right, I've got over 3 hours. I might as well put this on. And I liked it. It's a continuation of Jake Sully, who's the main character from the first film. And then he meets love of his life, Natiri, who is a Navi. Jake Jake Sully at the end of the first film decides to separate from his human body, which, if you recall, he is
Mhm.
paraplegic due
Yep.
to being injured in the war that he fought in. He was an ex-military guy, and he chooses to be like to have his body stay as a Navi person, and I guess he's considered Avatar because he's technically not born Navi. And him and Natiri start a family, and they have a son first, and then they end up adopting the daughter, who apparently, and if again we're going back to the first one, right? Sigourney Weaver's character um dies at the end of the first one, if you recall. And for I guess they explain like in the second film she ended up being pregnant, and perhaps like I had to watch this on like one of those YouTube explain, but she could have like potentially conceived a daughter by immaculate conception. Like there's different theories, but anyway, so she has a daughter named Kiri who ends up getting adopted by Jake Sully and Natiri, and then they have two other kids too. Later they have Loak, and Tuck is the youngest, who's a daughter. The oldest son, his name is like something with an N, Natiem. Yeah,
Hmm.
Netiem, something like that. And but yeah, you see them build their family, and of course, the villain comes back. Cortridge, I believe is his name, the guy who plays him is
Yep.
Stephen Lang. So he then becomes an avatar in the next film, and he gets a group of his own guys that are also go through the avatar. I don't know what to like. It's not an operation, but basically transformation as an
Yeah.
avatar, right?
Yeah, they
And
transfer into the body, right? Like their human body
correct.
stays here. They transfer their
The,
consciousness into this
the human
thing.
body is in like a tube somewhere,
Yeah.
and like some sort of station, and then they're in avatar form, and then they go to Pantora. So they're trying to get back at Jake Sully because of how he ended things in the first film, and
And
at
Stephen
go
Lang's
ahead.
character is a clone, right? Because he died in the first one, I think. I feel, and I could be wrong, but I thought from the promo because I started watching this,
Oh yeah, I
and
think you're right.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd have to go back because again, this is like 2 years ago. There's just so
hmm
much that happens. But anyway, so they're forest Navi. So like I guess the Navi people, there's like different tribes, but they're like the forest tribe, right? And because of the fact that Cortridge in Avatar form, we're gonna call him Avatar form, is like after him with his cronies. At this point, Jake Sully and Natir are like, we got to move our family and protect them. So they end up going to a different land of people, and they're the people of the water. And the individuals that are, I don't want to say like the chief, but like the head of that tribe are Ronell, who's played by Kate Winslet, and then her husband, um, and I'm trying to think his it's played by Cliff Curtis. I think his name is I can't even pronounce this. Tonawari.
yeah,
Tonawari. Yeah, so and they like welcome them in, but I think it's more just like out of initially out of fear of like being attacked by they call them the sky people, as in like the
hmm
non basically humans are called sky
yeah,
people.
yeah, because they're
Um,
from outer space, basically, right?
correct.
Like,
Exactly. So they have to like well, Jake Sully, Natiri, and their family, they have to live, and you come to find like because they were from the forest, their bodies are not well adapted to like live in the water and in this new environment. So they have to learn how to adapt to that way of life. So you get to see the friendships and bonds that they form there, and they all have to come together, both the people of the water and the Sully family to fight against Partridge and his Avatar clan, essentially, because at the end of the day, they want to get rid of Jake Sully. They
mm,
have, you know, a bone to pick with him because of what happened in the first film. And while this is all going on, they find like I forgot the name of these species, but they look like whales. They have this special
mm-hmm.
liquid that they produce or this type of natural resource, and I forgot what it's called, but it's like this gold substance, and this gold substance allows you to stop aging. It like
mm
stunts the process of aging, so that's like another, I guess, I don't want to say plot twist, but another part of the story too. They want to collect and kill as many of these type of species to collect this type of resource. So um but yeah, I liked it. It's definitely more of a cinematic experience than anything else. I wish I saw this in theaters because I mean it looks incredible on my flat screen TV, and I can only imagine how it looked in theaters to see these worlds and such. And it was very cool. I mean, the story of the family, it was nice to see too, very wholesome, right? And Jake Sully has completely found himself an identity within the Navi people.
hmm
This is a man who I think since his injury and like obviously before the first film, he was really only there at that center. I forgot what they call the center, but like where they study the Navi people and do the Avatar studies because his brother died and he was just taking his brother's place. So I think he kind of was going through his own trials and tribulations and just trying to find his purpose. And his purpose really was to transition and use his full body as an avatar and become, one of the Navi people and build a family.
mm
So I think that part was very beautiful, and also just the story itself and how they are able to build bonds with other tribes, and it just showcases just loyalty among sometimes people who are initially strangers, and the people that you think are closest to you aren't exactly individuals that have your best interest. So that's kind of another, lesson learned with the Avatar films too.
Yeah, it looked beautiful. I
It
tried to watch it
was.
with my kids, and I don't know if I was tired or what, but I couldn't get into it because it's long, and
It's
so I
so
I
long.
haven't gone back to it because it's 3.5 hours or something like that.
Something like
It's
that. It's very long.
3 hours 12 minutes. Yeah, yeah, it's super long. Beautiful. Like I said, I remember
It is.
the first one for its time was groundbreaking. I think I saw the first one twice in the theater because I saw it once regular, and I saw it a second time in 3D, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't
Oh, I'm
super
sure that.
different, but like there were scenes. So if you remember in the first one, there's a scene where they're kind of in this command center and they
Yep.
have all the equipment out there. That was in 3D. So like that stuff kind of popped out to you, and
Cool.
it was subtle. Like it's not like everything was in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
But they put some stuff in 3D, and it was a beautiful movie. And I know this one was beautiful. I know this one belongs on the um on the big screen. So that
Mm-hmm.
that I think makes it a little harder to watch too, because it's designed for that experience. And so when you take it home,
Mm-hmm.
you do lose some of the flash and vibrance that you got in the theater, but there's still gorgeous movies.
Definitely. And apparently the next one comes out next year, and they already got
Oh
approval
wow.
for two more after that, which is like, okay. I honestly would have been satisfied if they stopped at the first, or even, I
Mhm.
mean, like this one was good, don't get me wrong, but I don't know how much further they can go with this.
Yeah, I'm really curious about what he but I mean this movie did great. This movie made a ton of
It
money,
did.
and
It
um
did.
I was convinced it wasn't going to do it. Like part of me was like, why? I know the first one was great, but it had been so long and the box office didn't feel the same by the time this
Yeah,
came out. Like I didn't think this had the legs to do it, and it did. So the third one could very well prove me wrong too.
sure.
Um, but I feel like at some point these stories could run out of steam. But
I
I
agree.
mean, you could say the same thing about Star Wars. They made 9 films, so
Yeah.
you never know. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. The other thing about them is they're making a ton of money, but they don't have small budgets. Like these are not easy films to
No.
make. So,
Mm-mm.
uh,
I was watching on YouTube just how they film it, and they're like in these like they look like wetsuits
with little
and
ping pong balls all over them.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and then you see the actors and they're doing the movements and stuff, but then they've got dots on their faces
hmm
like they look like Cabbage Patch dolls. Which is I guess that's just how they like
Yeah. They motion capture everything.
motion
It's a
capture.
trip to watch. Yeah.
It's cool. Because I was watching like one of the scenes like at the end of the second film, and I was just like, wow, okay, they're doing like the full movements, and this is cool. I wasn't sure how they did this, but I thought it was very fascinating. And then there's one character in this film who you he- his he's Portrait's son who
Mm.
ends up living in Pandora, and his name is also Miles, but he goes by Spider.
Oh
And
yeah, I remember hearing about that one. Yeah.
Spider is so the actor who plays him, his name is Jack Champion. And this kid, I'm gonna call him a kid. He's 19, but he's a kid. Um, he is technically a human, but he's like the Tarzan of Pandora. Like it's like you're not our species, but we're gonna breed you and make you like us.
Yeah.
So he is the only one, and I saw this in the behind the scenes. Like he is his character himself, and he doesn't need to get all of that. And what am I trying to say? What was the word you used before? Like
About
when they had the with the
oh
balls
yeah,
and
the motion
like
capture.
motion capture. Like he is not in motion capture, I guess. He's in like the loincloth, like a Tarzan doing everything because he doesn't have like the avatar face, and he's just a human that's like kind of living that world.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how he's like incorporated into the film, and it's Cortez's son, but I guess at this point it's like, okay, but he's living as like he is one of the Na'vi people, even though he's a human. So that
Mm.
part's pretty cool and how he's incorporated into scenes where it's like, wow, this human is mixing with these these generated faces and bodies. It's cool how they incorporate that together into, one screen.
Yeah, I saw this thing and it's super interesting and I didn't see the latest Planet of the Apes movie.
Hmm.
Um, but if you buy the DVD, they have a cut of the movie with zero special effects. So you can actually watch the movie with everybody in their motion capture suits and everything. So you
Wow.
can like see the entire movie kind of as it was made and the scenes that they chose for the movie.
Hmm.
And so you'll see that. You see all the motion capture suits, all this stuff, because the entire movie is motion capture almost because, they're apes and all that. And I saw
Yeah.
that and I was like, I almost want to buy that Blu-ray for that special feature, even if I would hate the movie. Like it would be really fascinating to watch that whole progression.
100%. Just
Yeah.
seeing like this one ending scene with all of them in the suits and then like closing my eyes and hearing um why am I blank? Zoe
Hmm.
Saldana, who plays Natiri, like shriek and scream for her child. And you're like, oh my God, that's her voice. And you see her in a wetsuit. And then even like Sam Worthington, who's Jake Sully, it's like you see like his actual face and he's a very attractive man, but like you forget like he's older now. Like this
Yeah.
is not like when he was in the initial one, it's like he's like in his maybe like 30s and like super drop dead gorgeous. And now it's like, oh, he's aged a bit, but he's still Jake Sully,
Yeah.
right? So that's pretty cool to see the actors and their true faces and doing all of these movements. I thought it was awesome. So hopefully they have that for Avatar too.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if they do, but I think it would be something really interesting to do maybe for the third one if they haven't done it for the second one. It's just I think it's cool. I think it's neat to see
So cool.
kind of pull back the curtain and see how the stuff gets done because you're not fooling anybody. Like nobody actually believes that they put on costumes and made this movie, right? We all know this is CGI special effects and
Totally.
Cameron's doing it to a level that almost nobody can. Like it's ridiculous what he's pulling off
Hmm.
in this industry. And I think like it would be really fascinating to watch what it looks like without, human intervention.
Yeah, it was cool. Now I was like looking on YouTube and I was like, oh my God, this is the scene at the end and it's like pretty powerful and they're all crowding around one of his kids and it's like and they pull like they were on a ship and anyway, you go see it and I don't want to spoil it, but it's just this one scene and then seeing all their faces except for that one kid spider who like is not the CGI. I'm calling him Tarzan, but he's like this Tarzan type. Like he looks like himself as a character, and then the rest of them are in the wetsuit CGI suits with, you know, like you said, like the balls, like just like random they look like pom-poms. They're little
Hmm.
pom-poms
Yep.
on their bodies. And it's so fascinating. It's so cool to see that. Yeah, I really want to see like a take of that, like in full form too. Just how they do a lot of the special effects for like when they're because there's so many fighting scenes too,
Hmm.
Like that's got to be so cool watching. I want to see Kate Winslet. I didn't even see Kate Winslet in the suit. I want to see her in the suit. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
So,
Like if you ever watch they do this with video games too, because there's a lot of video games where they do motion capture
oh,
for
I'm
the stuff.
sure.
So The Last of Us, if you watch some of the making of videos, what's also really funny is what they use for the physical environment because they
Hmm.
don't, that's all going to get put in later. Like half of the stuff that they use in this video game was like PVC piping. Like they open a door and it's like a stick with a knob that they just push and like it's crazy. It's so funny to watch all these things that they don't need, right? So they
Right.
don't spend the money on it. They just put something in it they can use so they have something to react with, but it's not
Hmm.
necessarily like because again, in Avatar, they're not building these sets. They're not building a giant jungle and doing all this
No.
stuff. They're just acting on, on a soundstage and um
It looks
y-
like a gymnasium from what I
mhm.
saw. It
Yeah,
looked like a gymnasium
it's like all
with,
green or all blue.
Right, exactly. And they just so cool. It's
It's
so cool
wild.
how they do
It's
it,
wild. Yeah.
how creative they get. Yeah, it's definitely one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And just even if you're like not into the story, you don't have to be into the story. Just
Just watch it
watch it.
on mute.
It's just watch it on mute. It's so beautiful what they do to this, what they put on screen. It's yeah. It makes me think of like, Nicole Kidman when she's talking, like if you see anything in AMC theater and she's like does her spiel
Oh
now
yeah, yeah,
before
yeah.
on the silver screen. It's like magic. I mean, that's literally what this is.
Yeah.
This
Yeah. It
this
really is.
film.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. So yeah, go see Avatar. You don't have to love it, just watch it. Like just I don't know, just have a meal, have it in the background. It's just gorgeous to watch.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, moving on to things that were made with CGI, me and my kids had the opportunity to see the new Transformers film, Transformers 1, a week before it releases. So if I can get my ass in gear and actually release this episode in a reasonable time, I might actually be talking about this before most people will even be able to see it. Uh, but we went to see Transformers 1 today. It stars Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, um, shoot, who plays Jordan Peele, isn't it? No, sorry, Keegan Michael Key. And I can't remember this dude's name. And I know that I should know. Oh, Brian Tyree Henry. And the voice acting is really good. Lawrence Fishburne has a role. John Hamm has a role. Steve Buscemi has a role. Um, it's they put together a good cast for this. And what this is growing up, I grew up on the Transformers cartoon in the 80s, and they made the movie in 86, I think. Um, and they have made tons of iterations of the Transformers since then. They have the big Michael Bay movies, which are the live action Transformers films that over time slowly kind of got worse and worse. And then they kind of revitalized those with Bumblebee, which everybody really enjoyed. Um, and but my youngest son, for whatever reason, got into all these things that I loved as a kid. So Transformers, he knows more about Transformers than I'll ever know. And he knows all the episodes, he's watched them all, and he's super excited about this. And so this is a telling of a part of the story that maybe they've told in comics, I'm not sure, but basically has never been on film. We're looking at the origin of some of these characters that we've all known. And in the movie, this guy behind me, B B127, I think it was what he called himself. They just call him B. He's not Bumblebee yet. This is Orion Pax before he becomes Optimus Prime. This is D16 before he becomes Megatron, and then you've got uh, Alita One, who is a character who's been around in some of the movies, but she wasn't in the original cartoon, or at least early on in the cartoon. Um, and so this is like a super prequel. This is before he becomes Optimus Prime, before he becomes Megatron, and this, when you watch this, Chris Hemsworth is the biggest name in it besides Scarlett Johansson, I think. Um, and what is really cool is, you know, uh, Orion Pax and Chris Hemsworth lead the story. Like the story is really kind of told from their perspective. But what really makes it fascinating, what me and my kids kept talking about in the car, is this is really about how this character D16, who's best friends with Orion Pax, they're buddies. They work down in the mines on their planet called Cybertron. Um, they're just kind of worker bees. Um, Orion Pax wants more for himself, than he's got, and D16 is happy to just work. Like that's his thing, but they're buddies. Like they're buddies, they're really good friends. And this is about how he becomes like the main villain across everything else after that. And they do a great job in the storytelling because all of his motivations, all of the things that drive him to become that are super believable. Like it is a story arc. It's a better story arc than they give to Orion Pax becoming Optimus Prime because you can see these things directly affecting this very, worker bee, nice guy kind of character that drives him to become, an evil megalomaniac. Like, and it's really cool. Like we were talking in the car, me and my kids, about how, when you have a good guy character and he's just becoming, more and more good, that's almost a harder story to tell because some of the things that they go through are just kind of too fluffy, right? Whereas this character, you can really see him break down. You can see the character arc that he goes through to become um, this bad guy. And so this is really the story about the de-evolution of this character. Now, um, the plot in this is pretty wide. It's an hour and 45 minutes, I think, is what it ended up being. Yeah. Um, and it's a really well told, really well crafted story. And one of the things that was really fun about it that especially my son really enjoyed is there are a million cameos of characters in this movie that have existed throughout Transformers, but they don't name them. Like they're there for you to pick out if you're a fan, but if you don't know and you don't see them, you wouldn't be bothered. You wouldn't even know and you would just go along with the movie. Um it doesn't drive the story forward for them to be there. It's just really cool to see them there. And there's a lot of jokes, a lot of moments, little bits of dialogue, things like that 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 are based from the original series, from the original movie, and some moments like that where a joke really lands if you know it, and if you don't know it, it's still funny. Like one of the things that was really cool, and granted, when you're going to see this in the setting that we are, where it's a week early, nobody's going to see this movie that doesn't love Transformers on some level, right? Like if you're going to the early screening, you're there because you know the material. But like there were moments when the whole theater laughed. There was moments when the whole theater got behind what was going on. At the end, the whole theater clapped. Like this movie, it's a good movie. They did a really good job on it. It's really entertaining. I think everybody did a great job. And talking to my kids, I love Scarlett Johansson. I think she's super talented. She was maybe the weakest part of the movie, which is rare, I think, for her. Um, and I don't know if that's because the character, even in the canon of Transformers, hasn't ever been given a lot of love or whatever. She was kind of a chess piece in this, kind of pushing the story forward. She didn't have the development that the other characters had. Even B, played by Keegan Michael Key, um, didn't have, or had a little more character progression than she did. And it just, she was okay. Like she just wasn't great, and everybody else did really well in this. I think Lawrence Fishburne's appearance in this was really cool. His part wasn't huge. It was very integral to the story. Um, and he doesn't have James Earl Jones voice, but he's got a great voice for storytelling and things like that. So when he's in there kind of explaining and narrating the things that happened in the past and what drove this story to where it's at, he does a really great job. And so after all of that, the story of this movie, you've got these two characters that are minors, and like I said, Orion Pax wants more for himself. He's trying to push himself forward, and there was a war on Cybertron against these characters called the Quintessons. They're these big bad guys. They've been in the movies and stuff, and effectively the Transformers lost and had to go underground. And in that, they lost um, the uh, what they call the primes, which are like their 13 leaders, were all lost except for one. And in that battle, they have this thing called the Matrix of Leadership, which is a big deal in all of Transformers. It's kind of the thing that makes Transformers magic happen. And it was lost in this war. And so the only one of the primes that survived was this guy, Sentinel Prime, played by John Hamm. And he is, rallying the people underground to to work and mine for what they call energon, which is what kind of feeds the people, which used to flow freely when they had the matrix of leadership. Now with it gone, they have to mine for it and look for it and all this. And so D16 and Orion Pax are miners. They get themselves into, a few fun, stupid situations. There's this big citywide race that they get themselves into that they totally don't belong in. They, they go through it and they do their thing, and it's a fun moment. It seems like they're on the up and, on the rise, and then they get kicked down even further. And they ultimately find their way to the surface to look for the matrix of leadership, because they think if they can do this, if they can find this thing, they can save the planet, be the heroes, and all this. And then the story starts to take turns that I don't want to spoil. Like, it's tricky because this movie isn't even out yet, so I don't want to spoil the things that happen. Um, but there's just, I mean, there's some great appearances in it. My son did not love Steve Buscemi as Starscream, uh, but I kind of did. The trick is that in the original cartoons, the character of Starscream had such a distinct voice, from the voice actor, that it's a hard one to repeat. And they've tried in iterations of this cartoon over the years, and it's just never quite been right. Um, but they did a pretty good job with it with Steve Buscemi. I really liked him, and overall, it was great. I think on IMDb, or sorry, yeah, on IMDb, it's got an 8.0 right now. Now, granted, it's not out. It's not as many reviews as it'll have once it's officially out. But I think on Rotten Tomatoes, it was in the 90s from the critics out of the gate, and I think it's really good because it's fun. It works as a kids action movie, animated movie, but it's PG for a reason. Like, um, I think the only bad word they ever say is badass. They say it a few times. There's death in this. Like, some of these robots die, and so it has adult themes. It is a darker movie. It's not so dark that it's like terrifying, but it's not always uplifting and happy. It had a lot of funny moments. Like I said, there were some moments in there where the entire theater laughed, and loudly. Like, there's some great jokes in it, and it all plays really well. But it also has a dark side to it and a maturity to it that works for the parents going to see this movie. I think this is the goal here is to open this to a new audience again, and drive this franchise forward. And I think it'll do that. It was really entertaining. The story is actually really solid. Like, it really could have been kind of a silly story that just got them from point A to point B, but I think so many things happen in this. And like I said, I think for me, it really was more of the D16 to Megatron story than it was the Ryan Pax to Optimus Prime story, even though Chris Hemsworth has more screen time and more kind of control over the story. Like, it's the overall story is his story, but the thing that's really going on in the background is arguably more important and more impressive. So, if you're a Transformers fan, if you're an animated film fan and you've got kids and you want to go see it, it definitely feels like it's, more boy oriented to girl oriented, right? Like, it definitely feeds that audience a little more because it is that action robot thing. I wish that Scarlett Johansson's character had been a little better and a little bigger in it, because I think you could kind of close that gender gap a little bit by giving her character a little more to be impressed with. Because like I said, she's awesome. Like, I absolutely love Scarlett Johansson. I think she's great, and everything she does is just this didn't give her enough to work with. It's almost like, Chris Hemsworth was working on it, and he called his buddy to come work on the movie with him, and she only got a little bit to do. Um, so, this is definitely feels like it's setting up a franchise. I think my son said that they have a planned trilogy for it. It, I think it'll do very well at the box office. It may not be like $1 billion film, but it's an animated film, so families will go see this. When you take your kids to see this, you're not buying two tickets for your kids, you're buying two tickets for your kids and yourself and your spouse or significant other or whatever. Like it just these movies inherently pull more people into the theater. So I think it has the opportunity to do really well, and I hope that it does. And it should get a sequel. I think it was really well done, and I'm excited to see what people think once this is out in the wild and doing you know big theater numbers. I think it'll probably drop Thursday night, and we'll go from there. We'll see how it does at the box office from there. But I'm excited to see what it does in the box office and for the franchise overall. All right, we will let you close out the episode with Mother of the Bride, which is on Netflix.
It is on Netflix.
Yeah, I don't. Uh, Rebel
It's
Ridge
not
is on
come.
Netflix.
I
I
don't
need to
know
call
why it's
them.
not coming up on your algorithm, Kevin. Something tells me
I
that
know. I know.
it came up in mine though. So I recently rejoined Netflix, and reason being, Emily in Paris came back. So I was
Oh,
like, oh, I have to subscribe back. And now I'm catching up on some new content, and this was recommended. I saw Brooke Shields is in it, and Miranda Cosgrove, and I was like, oh, this sounds good. And one of my favorite movies growing up was Father of the Bride with Steve
fantastic.
Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic 90s movie, right? And I'm like, oh, they're trying to make this, from a mother's point of view. How cute. So I was like, how bad could it be? Yeah, I was wrong. I
That's a
was
4.8 on IMDb. Wow.
yeah, it's quite shit, to put it nicely. Anyway, so yeah, it was a waste of my time. But whatever. I wanted to see it. Good cast. Benjamin Bratt, I loved him in Miss Congeniality. Chad Michael Murray, fucking dreamboat, pardon my French, but
Hmm.
like haven't seen him in a minute. So I was like, this is such a good cast. Time to, you know, go back and see some pretty big stars that I used to love in the early 2000s, 90s. So it takes place initially. You've got Brooke Shields, who is a scientist, and she hasn't seen her daughter in a number of months, who's played by Miranda Cosgrove. Her daughter's character's name is Emma, and Lana is the mother, played by Brooke Shields. And Emma has some pretty big news for her mom after she's been doing an internship in London. She met a boy named RJ, and he proposed. And it's funny because it's very similar to the movie
Hmm.
Father of the Bride, where, she's sitting down and she's like, Dad,
Met.
I met a man in Rome. He's handsome, he's brilliant, and we're getting married. Uh, Not to that, that's like the little kid version
Hmm.
of I freaking love that scene. It's hysterical. But
Yeah, because it's a little girl, and then all of a sudden
version,
it's not. Yeah.
Dad, say something. Yeah. So it's funny. So she tells her while she's like when she comes back, I guess it's in California or wherever she is. And she's like, "Excuse me, like you haven't even known this guy for too long." She's like, "Oh yeah, not only are we, engaged and getting married, but we're getting married like in a few weeks in Thailand, Phuket." So at that point, she's like an influencer, and she's like, "Oh yeah, and I'm not moving back to the States. I have a job with this influencer company, and I'm doing really well, and they're paying for this entire wedding." And the mom's like, "Okay." So she goes to Phuket, and at this point, you learn that her husband had passed away a number of years ago, so she was pretty much like a single mother for a very long time and raising Emma, so they're very close, the two of them. And they end up showing up to Thailand, and you see RJ, who is her fiance, and then she's with, I believe, just like a close friend or aunt, played by who plays Janice, who's Rachel Harris,
I love Rachel
is the
Harris.
actress. Yeah, so she's there, and they all of a sudden start recognizing people like who are in the lobby. They're like, "Oh my God, we went to college with all these people," and all of a sudden, RJ's like, "Oh, Lana, this is my father, Will," and who plays who's played by Benjamin Bratt, and they look at each other like they saw a ghost. And you come to find out that Benjamin Bratt's character Will and Brooke Shields' character Lana had dated, and they were lovers decades ago in college, and then never heard from each other after an incident like after college. So very fascinating. So it's like about like long lost love and new love, and they're on an island. So of course, like they're still attracted to each other, and of course there's a lot of bikinis and interesting situations. And Lana, of course, is single at that point, and she's been single for a number of years since her husband passed. And there's many scenarios that they're like, all right, let's try to get them back together. And while she's planning this wedding, it's very stressful, and there's no involvement of the mom at all. It's all being planned by like a personal assistant, and it's just kind of odd and unbelievable. Honestly, I just thought the whole thing was like very over the top. Maybe meant to be cute, but it was just a little much. And I mean, like, I'm sure you can predict the ending. La 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 la. They go back together at the end. Oh my God, my long lost love. Let's be together. It's just it's very silly. Oh, and Chad Michael Murray is like this hot guy that's there on the island who also is, I guess, a doctor too. So he tries to go on dates, or he does go on a couple dates with Brooke Shields' character Lana, even though he's like 20 years younger plus, and he's still freaking dreamy to this day. So that was interesting. Yeah, like after I think like 20, 30 minutes, I was like, I guess I have to finish this, but this sucks.
It sounds like they
So
just
bad.
went way overboard with the rom-com idea of it because like when I think of Father of the Bride, it's not really a rom-com. Like it's a comedy. Like the romance has already happened. She's getting married.
Yeah,
Uh, Steve Martin's character is already married. It's about the chaos of the wedding. Like that is what
correct.
Father of the Bride is about, and how this guy has to give up his daughter. But
Right.
it's not a romantic comedy, and this sounds like they went hardcore into the rom-com side of it with
Totally.
Benjamin Bratt
Brooke
and made it
Shields.
more about them than it probably was about the actual wedding itself.
Correct. And it's just like, oh, why did you leave? And like unpacking stuff from decades ago. And I'm just like, this is so stupid. This is so stupid. Okay, fine, destination wedding, great. But having a personal assistant plan your child's wedding and you having like no involvement, it's like she doesn't even have any like really any of her friends there. It's just like, oh, it's just gonna be my mom's gonna be my best woman and his dad's gonna be his best man. It's just so unrealistic. Oh, and we just met like within the year and now we're getting married. It's just too unbelievable and ridiculous. And maybe they wanted to make it like something to be dreamy since they're getting
Yeah.
married in an island. It's just it was pretty much like everything you wouldn't want. I in a destination wedding, I think, with like other people doing everything for you. And I don't know. I wasn't buying it. I was like, this is really stupid.
Yeah, it looks like nobody did. This is a 13% from the critics and a
It's just,
17% from the
it
audience.
was a waste of my time, Kevin. And you know what? Netflix, you got it wrong.
That's awesome.
So dumb.
I
I
actually, because it's so bad, I kind of want to watch it. Like,
Fine, watch it, Kevin, but it's a waste of your time. Like
I'm sure.
just it's so dumb. I can't get that time back. I'm more upset that I couldn't get that time back. And I mean at this point, how many films or movies have I been like I really didn't like it? Like
Yeah.
I very rarely I'm like this is a waste of my time. Like I usually like give things a chance, and yeah, this was just so bad. It was so bad. Like I'm trying to think of like anything good about it. Maybe like you see different parts of like Phuket. That's it. That's it. Like great. It's beautiful. Like whatever. You can see that on other
Travel Channel.
shows, travel channel, and then be like, "Oh, have your wedding here." It was so dumb. So dumb. And this is why you don't fuck with the classics.
Right? Like
Don't.
they did the remake of Father of the Bride, and I don't think that one did very well either.
The second film. Yeah, because they have
Then
with the babies and stuff,
no,
right?
they did one last year.
They have
Um
a new one coming out in November.
they did
Father of
this
the
one.
Bride.
Hold on, let me look because what they did, it was all Latin American cast.
Oh, so they're doing like,
They
okay,
did it was
gotcha,
it was
something
Andy
similar.
Garcia, Gloria Stefan. That one did well from the critics. Actually got 80%, but only 52% from the audience. But yeah, that one was Andy
These are
Garcia,
in the
Gloria
teens.
Stefan.
These are under 20%. That is like the lowest I've
Yeah.
seen in a very long time. It's just,
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
and it's funny because I'm like, I wanted to like Brooke Shields as an actress, right? Especially later in
Yeah,
life and give
yeah.
her justice back from everything she's been through and such. And Benjamin Bratt, like I loved him in Miss Congeniality, right?
Yeah, he's great.
It's just such a waste. Like who came up with this dumbass idea for this movie? Seriously, gross. No thanks. Just such a I don't want to say gross, but it just was such a waste of my time. So bad. Don't see it. I mean, you'll probably watch it now because I'm telling you to not watch it. But just don't waste your time.
Well, it's like they felt like they had the gender swap this, which is cool. Like I don't have a problem with that. Tell a
I don't have a
similar
problem with
story,
it.
but it's like because it's women, they have to throw in all this romance. Like instead of keeping it with again with the chaos of the wedding, with it about being this parent kind of afraid they're losing their child. Like that was the whole point of Father of the Bride.
Yeah,
Like he felt like he was losing his little girl, and
yeah.
like if they had held on to that, it didn't have to be a rom-com just because it's
No.
women led. And then like some producer out there is like, well, we've got women, they've got to get their hearts broken, you know? Like you're like,
So
well, okay.
stupid. I mean, one of my favorite comedies, and it's about a wedding, is Bridesmaids. That
Yeah.
is one of like, that's one of the funniest movies I've seen. And granted, that's more from the perspective of the bridal party and
Hmm.
the maid of honor, and it's fun. But I mean, that movie actually has some substance and character to it, and just
Yeah.
it's very entertaining. This was just a snooze fest, truly a snooze fest, and such a shame because it's on such a beautiful island. And yeah, they really had they beyond missed the mark on this. So, oh well,
All
can't get
right.
that time back.
Oh, that's great. What a way to end the show
Mm,
with Mother of the Bride. All right, cool. I don't have anything else. I actually love that we ended on a total stinker of of a movie. So again, I really might watch it just because it's so bad. But I think I've said this like the last like 4 episodes, but I need to watch Chaos. I need to watch Terminator Zero. I've started both of those. Actually, Chaos is really good. I just didn't want to talk about it because I had this other stuff that I was talking about. But Chaos is solid on Netflix. Really dark and twisty. Not Transformers. Terminator Zero has been pretty good so far. Um, and I know some stuff is coming out this week. The Penguin comes out on Cinemax, not Cinemax, HBO Max. That one
I
looks pretty
saw
good.
I
So
saw a preview for that for the movie this evening
it's
before I
a
saw Twisters.
it's a
Penguin
series. Yeah, it's a
looks so
series.
good.
Yeah, it I think it's getting like tens across the board from places. Like
Really
it's supposed to be incredible. So
cool.
I'm really excited for that one. So
Very
we'll do
cool.
that.
I'm seeing on Tuesday, so I'll talk about it next week. But Blink Twice, the new film that's
Oh,
directed by Zoe Kravitz and stars Channing Tatum.
yeah, I've heard that one is not quite what it appears to be as far as the story goes and stuff like that. Like it's a little, I think it's a little darker than people expected it to be.
I'll report back.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. I'm curious about it. I don't know enough about it to really say anything, but I think Jen watched it from our group and she was surprised by, um,
Mhm.
kind of surprised by it. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how that one goes. and hopefully some good horror flicks start coming out here in the next couple weeks too, because we're getting there. We're already halfway through September, so do that. And so cool. Well, with that, I will say, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.